video, I'm going to have a go at explaining how classes and objects work in Python. And I'm going to explain it in the context of a really simple game. So let's start off by creating a game where you have characters and they have energy, and then you can shoot at the characters and it reduces their energy until they die. And this is just going to be like a text role-playing game simulation. Random numbers for this, and you'll have the energy, and then we'll make a random number. So if random 0, move this across a bit quickly. The window's a bit too narrow. There we go. So if you miss, then it will say you. I want to put that in a loop, so I'm going to select the whole thing. That gives us a very simple game. Now I better put in. Okay, so it says press enter to fire. I press enter. The enemy, you hit. The enemy has 4 energy left. You hit. You miss. You hit. So you can see this is a really simple game, but the basic idea is there, right? Now, let's say that we want the enemy to shoot back at us. So we've already got a variable called energy, which is the enemy's energy. If we want the enemy to be able to shoot back, then obviously we also need energy for us. So one way I might do that is to change this variable name. Let's call it enemy energy. So I'll use text replace to do that. So let's player energy 5, and then copy and paste. Obviously this time it needs to change player energy. That the code that we already had, and then adjusted it so that it works on the variable player energy instead of enemy energy. So you shoot at the enemy, you miss. He shoots at you, he hits you, your energy goes down to 4. Then I can press enter. So I shoot and miss, he shoots and misses. I hit him. Okay. Now, the problem with this is that although it does work, firstly, all of my variables are getting longer because I have to write the word enemy in front of them. And of course, let's say that I wanted to make the game more advanced. Maybe not only does the enemy have energy, but they also have like how powerful their gun is. So it could be like, mission do they have, what type of gun do they have. And I'd have to have loads and loads of different variables which all began with enemy, and then of course I'd have to have loads of variables beginning with player. It's just going to be really awkward. I'm going to need to do a lot of typing. So the first step towards making this a bit neater is that instead of energy and player energy as variable names, I'm just going to call the variables energy. To prevent them from getting confused, I'm going to put each one into its own class. So I'll put player. Even though the variables have the same name, because they're in different classes, I can distinguish between them. And the way that I do that is to adjust a variable, I need to write the name of the class, and then a dot, and then the name of the variable. Same here. Easy to see that they're classes and not normal variables. Run the program again and press enter, and you can see it works exactly the same. But now at least the structure is clear in this case, right? So instead of having like a really long variable name, I've got the name of the class and then a dot, and then I've got a much shorter variable. So what we've done here is actually something called making namespaces, right? These are namespaces because they allow us to separate variables which have the same name. And namespaces are kind of the first step towards what we can do with object orientation. Now, even though this is an improvement over what we had before, there still is quite a bit of repetition, because one thing is that enemy and player both have a value of energy, which is 5. So they actually contain exactly the same variables with exactly the same data. It's just that we need to keep track of them separately, right? So the enemy has their energy and the player has their energy, but they both do have a variable called energy, and in both cases it starts out at 5. So we can simplify it again. So the enemy and the player are both examples of actors in the game, right? So because they're kind of like characters in the game, we call those actors. So I'm going to call this class actor, and then down here I'm going to say that don't put player equals actor on its own, because that would just mean the player and actor were exactly the same thing. What I do is I write open close, and that means that the player is going to be a copy of the actor. So it has the same variables the actor has, but it's not actor itself, it is a copy of that. And then here say the class. So now when I talk about enemy down here and player down here, I'm still talking about enemy and player, but I'm going to use lowercase letters again, because these aren't classes anymore, objects which have been created from the class. So this is the class, and then I've made a copy of all of the variables in that class, and that creates an object. Does exactly. Okay, but this is an improvement again, because now we can see that the player and the enemy both have the same structure. And for example, if I want to add like an ammunition, I could just add it in one place, and that automatically would be added to both the player and the enemy, because they both are types of actor. Okay, so then the next thing is maybe we want to be able to subtract from the energy of an actor and detect whether that actor is killed or not, or whether they get hit or not. So you can see that this program, it actually includes basically the same program code twice. That and that are almost exactly the same. So what I'm going to do to class, I'm going to write the function, and we'll call this write the function, I include an argument called self. Now that self is going to be whichever actor is being attacked. So if I attack the player, then self would equal player. And if the enemy is being attacked, then self would equal enemy. So now I take this code that we wrote earlier on, and instead of subtracting from enemy energy, I want to subtract from self.energy, because maybe it's the player is being attacked. But in either case, the value of self is going to be the person who is being attacked. Now, these messages are specific to the person who is attacking. So I'm just going to change the language a bit. Let's say, for example, and then we can say so I'm just trying to avoid the you or he. Okay, now because I've moved that into this attack method, I can now just put, because you are shooting at the enemy, so that means that enemy there. Now, I don't really like the word attack, because this kind of suggests that the enemy is attacking the player, but this actually is referring to the player attacking the enemy. So maybe I'll call this like and then this time the enemy shoots at the player. So this. Now, if I run the program, the messages obviously have been simplified, but the basic idea is still the same. So it says you shoot at the enemy, bullet misses. He shoots at you, bullet misses. So the game still works exactly the same way. And again, we've been able to simplify it a lot, because instead of having that program code repeated, it now only appears once inside the class. Okay, and then when we call the function enemy.defend, it's running that program code, and the value of self is enemy. And then down here, we run the program code again, but the value of self is player. So this allows us to extract the common program code, which was used in both places, and reuse it. Now, of course, this still isn't ideal, because we would like the messages to say you hit him or he hit you. But we can easily fix this up by maybe just adding some arguments. So I could say, for example, defend. So then I could say and then here we could say now, because I've got separate entries for attacker and defender, I can provide those. So the enemy, the attacker is he or him. Now, one problem is that it should be him here, but it should be he here. So let's just put him, and then I'll swap it. Because you shoot at the enemy, you missed, he shoots at you, he missed. That's fine. You shoot at the enemy, you hit him, him has 4 energy left. So that's not perfect, but we could always add in, for example, I'm kind of demonstrate the point that I want to get about other approach, right? But this is really just an exercise to demonstrate how. So there we go. You hit him, he has 4 energy left. Okay, so hopefully that explains a little bit about how classes and objects work in Python. You could definitely develop this game more. So for example, you could give each player a gun with a certain power rating, maybe different types of ammunition, and then one way to make this game more interesting is that you could have multiple enemies. So if you defeat an enemy, you could then choose different types of weapon upgrade or something like that, and then attack a more difficult enemy. So there's loads of ways that you can take a very simple game like this and actually build in something quite strategic. So if you want to practice a little bit with object-oriented programming, then that would be a good exercise for you to have a go at.